The Iranian plateau, bastion of mighty empires for millennia, the Elamites, Medes, Persians, Hellenistic Seleucids, Parthians, and Sasanians, all built venerable empires, each assimilating and building upon the technological, organizational, and cultural achievements of the former. The last three of these great empires rivaled the Roman Empire and waged bitter wars against it in a series of never-ending stalemates, resets, and standstills, over a period lasting more than 800 years. This ancient rivalry ended with both great civilizations being unexpectedly overwhelmed by the Arab Rashidun Caliphate. The Roman Empire managed to survive in a diminished form, while nearly all of Persia was absorbed into the Caliphate. The Dabuid dynasty, claiming descent from the Sasanian Shahs, held out as an independent bastion for Iranian Zoroastrian faith for more than a century. They repulsed a major Umayyad invasion in 716 AD. The Umayyads had established their dynasty's leadership over the Muslim world after the First Muslim Civil War of 661. Iranian conversion to Islam was a lengthy process, taking several generations within the Caliphate. For the first few centuries of Islamic rule, the population of the Iranian plateau remained overwhelmingly Zoroastrian. The Abbasid Caliphate toppled the Umayyads in the Abbasid Revolution, and 10 years later, in 760, they would conquer the Dabuid kingdom. The Caliphate's Iranian population played a pivotal role in the overthrow of the Umayyads, and the Abbasid period was marked by a reliance on Persian bureaucrats for governing the conquered territories. During this time, the majority of the Caliphate converted to Islam. Persianate customs were broadly adopted by their ruling elite, who became patrons of artists, scientists, and scholars throughout the empire. The 7th Abbasid Caliph, Al-Mamun, whose mother was Persian, commented, "The Persians ruled for 1,000 years, and did not need us Arabs even for a day. We have been ruling them for 2 centuries, and cannot do without them for an hour." Less than 30 years after his death, the warlord Yaqub al-Safar, a Persian coppersmith from a small town in what is now Afghanistan, rebelled against the Abbasids, conquering a large portion of their empire. He was a recent convert to Islam. He and his successors avidly promoted the Islamic faith alongside Persian language and culture throughout their short-lived but pivotal empire. Shortly after this, Safarid territory was cannibalized by 2 Iranian dynasties, the Daylamite Buyids and the Samanid Empire. Both revived the use of the Persian language in state use, and revived Sasanian court customs, using the titles Shah and Shah, King of Kings. The Buyids claimed descent from the Sasanian Shah Bahram V, and for a short time were considered the leading power in the Islamic world. The Samanids spent great sums patronizing science and literature as the Buyids, and at its height it was said their capital of Bukhara rivaled Baghdad in its glory and scientific achievement. As the Samanid Empire became ever more cultured and wealthy, they began to employ slave armies of Turkic origin. This would be their own undoing, and they were overthrown by a family of Turkic slave guards, the Ghaznavids. These Turkic slave soldiers turned sultans, fully assimilated into Persian culture with such enthusiasm that they outdid their ethnically Iranian counterparts, the Buyids. In the Ghaznavid royal court, hundreds of Persian poets were employed to compose, some paid to travel the empire, promoting Persian literacy. Large libraries were built, and agents sent to purchase and catalog Persian books and manuscripts, within and beyond the empire's borders. To the north, the Seljuk Turks, a nomadic people living on the periphery of the Muslim world, by the 11th century had converted to Islam, and an estimated 40,000 Seljuk families migrated from their ancestral homelands on the steppe into mainland Persia. In less than 20 years, these skilled horse archers would completely demoralize and defeat the Ghaznavid military, many times their size, utilizing hit-and-run tactics, and taking the Buyid capital of Baghdad. The ailing Roman Empire was their next target, conquering Asia Minor and the Levant. Like the Ghaznavids before them, these nomads quickly became Persianized in culture, although not in administration. In contrast to the highly centralized Buyid and Ghaznavid states, the massive Seljuk Empire was divided among squabbling family members who acted as autonomous rivals as often as members of the same state. During the Crusades, to retake the Holy Land. The Seljuk Turks were more concerned with their own dynastic rivalries than cooperating against the Crusaders, or rival Fatimid or later Ayyubid caliphates. The incessant squabbling of the Seljuks left them vulnerable. Their empire eventually fractured, and they were replaced in Iran by the Khwarezmian Empire, established by the son of a Turkish slave, turned governor appointed by the Seljuks. In the mid-13th century, Khwarezm was overwhelmed by the Mongol Empire, the largest contiguous empire in history. As Iran was recovering from the brutal conquest and destruction of several of its ancient cities under the rule of the Ilkhanate successor state in the 1330s, outbreaks of the Black Death ravaged the empire. In 1335, the Ilkhanate began to disintegrate rapidly and split up into several smaller rival successor states of the Mongols. Out of this chaotic patchwork of states arose the Turco-Mongol warlord Timur, also known as Tamerlane. He would unite the former states of the Ilkhanate and envisioned himself as the great restorer of the Mongol Empire of Genghis Khan, and while not descended from Genghis, he regarded himself as Genghis' heir, and arguably surpassed him in brutality of his conquests, putting entire metropolis to the sword, and was known for building mountains of human skulls. As much as he was known for the obliteration of ancient cities, he was a patron of the arts and Persian culture. Scholars, artisans, and architects were spared in his vast conquests, taking them back to his capital of Samarkand to beautify that city. During the reigns of Timur's successors, the imperial court became increasingly Persianized and Islamized, until it bore no resemblance to their Mongol ancestors. By the year 1500, the Timurid Empire had fractured into several squabbling factions, and the Shia Safavid Empire established itself in the aftermath of this collapse. It was led by Shah Ismail I, who claimed direct descent from the Prophet Muhammad. Under the Safavids, the economy was fueled by stability, which allowed trade to thrive. The Safavid military was one of the first in the world to fully exploit the use of gunpowder, and were long able to maintain the integrity of the empire's borders from the encroaching Ottoman Turks. It was the Safavids who made Iran the spiritual bastion of Shia Islam, and this period is considered to be a high point of cultural achievement and a high standard of living. In 1736, the Safavids were overthrown by the Turkic general Nader Shah, a brilliant military commander often compared to Napoleon and Alexander. The orphan son of a herdsman, he rose to become one of the most powerful men in the world. The Afsharid dynasty was greatly reduced in power after his assassination in 1747, and would remain an autonomous region within the following Zand dynasty that ruled Iran for a short but prosperous period, where patronage for painters was emphasized. They were overthrown by the Qajar dynasty of Turkic origin, who, like most dynasties since the 11th century, rose to power with the backing of Turkic tribal forces, while using educated Persians in their bureaucracy. And after a series of wars with the Russians and British empires in the 19th century, the empire ceded territory to its north and east, and was brought approximately to its current modern borders. With the Russian conquest of the former Silk Road to China, and Britain's control of the Persian Gulf trade to India, the Persian economy entered a long, slow period of decline, and the state went nearly bankrupt. Despite these setbacks, the Qajar state adapted, massively slashing government expenditures across the board, and investing heavily in the modernization of the country. The Shahs increasingly fell under the influence of Britain and Russia, and a resentful populace instituted a constitutional monarchy and parliament after the Iranian constitutional revolution. During World War I, Persia was occupied by Russia, Britain, and the Ottoman Turks, further increasing foreign influence. And in February 1921, Reza Khan, commander of the Persian Cossack Brigade, staged a coup d'etat and established himself as Shah of Iran. By 1951, the Shah was increasingly regulated to merely being a figurehead. At the time, 75% of Europe's oil came from Iran. The company that would become British Petroleum took the lion's share of the profits and gave a stipend to the Shah, who was increasingly seen as a puppet of Britain. The Iranian Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, tried to negotiate a 50-50 split of oil profits with the oil company. This was flat out refused. Frustrated, Mossadegh then campaigned to nationalize the oil company, and in 1953 it was nationalized. That same year, in the partially declassified Operation Ajax, the CIA overthrew Mossadegh and installed the Shah as the supreme leader of Iran. He let British oil do as it pleased and ruled with an iron fist, His secret police rounded up thousands. He would be overthrown in 1979 by the Ayatollah Khomeini, initially promising to uphold democracy and not to impose any strict Islamic law. Immediately after, Iraq invaded Iran in 1980, in response to Iran's support of Shia dissidents. It is estimated that over 1 million casualties were inflicted over the course of this lengthy war. During the war, the clerical rule in Iran became increasingly authoritarian. The war ended in a stalemate, both sides claiming victory, with neither of the countries gaining territory. The Islamic Republic of Iran today is home to over 80 million people, and remains at the heart of geopolitical events. This has been Epimetheus, and I hope you have enjoyed this overview of Iranian history. If you did, I think you'll also enjoy the history I've done on ancient Persia. If you would like to be a patron like the Shahs of old, you can support this channel on Patreon. I do all the writing, editing, drawing, and narrating, and I put everything you contribute back into improving this channel, like the microphone I'm speaking on now. Thank you so much.